Here on BBC One, the 9 o'clock news with Peter Sissons.
A committee of MPs says jingoistic tabloid journalism may have helped to cause the riots after last night's England defeat. There were 200 arrests in London and violence in towns across England from what the police called malevolent gangs. Labour is hit by a front-bench resignation tonight after its U-turn on devolution. And British hopes at Wimbledon take a dive. 6 go out in one day. Good evening. The row over tabloid coverage of Euro 96 took another turn tonight when the all-party National Heritage Committee of MPs expressed what it called its disgust at jingoistic gutter journalism and said it may well have had its effect in stimulating the riots that broke out last night after England's defeat. The worst violence was in the centre of the capital from what the police called malevolent hooligans bent on destruction. But there were incidents in towns and cities in West Yorkshire, Shropshire, Suffolk and across the Thames Valley. The Prime Minister said the rioters should not be allowed to besmirch the game of football. Nick Hyam reports.
The worst violence was in London's Trafalgar Square. Initial exuberance, fueled by drink and frustration, soon turned to ugly scenes. "18 people were injured, 40 arrested. Some in the crowd said the police had been too heavy-handed. The police said they'd given the fans a great deal of leeway. Some had gone too far. This police car was abandoned by its occupants after being surrounded by rioters. Other cars were surrounded and smashed, their terrified drivers still inside. Elsewhere across the country, there were isolated outbursts of violence. In this Sussex park, a Russian student was attacked and repeatedly stabbed by 2 youths who thought he was German. His condition is serious but stable. Police say it was attempted murder. The Prime Minister arrived in Lyon this morning to condemn the violence.
It wasn't remotely in the spirit of the way the England team have played, and it wasn't remotely in the spirit of the sportsmanship that we actually saw on the pitch at Wembley last night. These people should not besmirch soccer. They are not soccer supporters. They do damage to soccer.
Some MPs blamed tabloid newspaper headlines earlier in the week for stimulating the riots. The National Heritage Committee condemned what it called the xenophobic, chauvinistic and jingoistic gutter journalism. It said it was difficult to defend tabloid newspapers when their coverage descends to such levels. But one member of the committee said he saw no link between the newspaper coverage and the violence.
Certainly not, and indeed to give people the succour of being able to say, oh, well, I can blame somebody else apart from the thugs who actually caused the problem, I think is totally wrong. It was the thugs themselves, not newspaper editors, who caused the riots.
But the majority of fans were well behaved. In London's Sport Cafe, they were rerunning last night's penalty shootout all day. Half the population, 26 million, watched the penalties last night. An average of more than 23 million watched the match as a whole, making it a shared national experience.
It's what the nation's been looking for, not so much the winning, but you know, as long as the heart was there and did the best.
It was great fun watching the game. Everybody was in good spirits, everybody was cheering, you know, all through the penalties, everyone was cheering. But as soon as we lost, you know, the magic went away.
Last night, the nation had a party. The feel-good effect will take time to wear off, though today England woke to a national hangover symbolised in part by the riots. And once again, the tabloids stand accused of not understanding the difference between national pride and the xenophobia which leads to violence. Nick Hyam, BBC News.
The England coach Terry Venables said farewell to his players and to the media today, praising the team's performance and saying he wouldn't have changed anything about last night's match except the result. He'd already said before the European Championship that he would stand down after the tournament.
England checked out of the team hotel 3 days earlier than planned and without the trophy they wanted to win for the nation. To a man, they chose to come back here after the match to console each other, rather than go straight home from Wembley.
Because he feels he's let people down, and he hasn't, of course. He's been man enough to stand up and be counted. What doesn't destroy you completely only makes you stronger. And he'll find that. I said to him, he's got a week to cry and he's got to get back in the game again.
While Terry Venables starts a new life as the ex-England coach, football will reflect on his legacy and the team's readiness for the next World Cup campaign. He believes the young players brought into the squad, the likes of the Neville brothers and Jamie Redknapp, are the future for England. Venables himself has got them playing in more thoughtful and sophisticated style, and in the 4-1 demolition of Holland, they produced England's most memorable night for 30 years. The record since 1994, when he took over, reads: played 23, won 12, drawn 9 and lost only 2. For most experts, that's impressive form.
I think he's done a terrific job. He's handled himself very well. He's handled the media very well. Tactically, everything has been spot on, and I think he's brought the best out of the side, and it's just a fraction from actually going all the way.
Now it's Glenn Hoddle's turn. The new coach shares many of the same views about the game and will already have in mind the first World Cup qualifier against Moldova at the beginning of September.
See ya. Bye.
Mr. Venables, meanwhile, leaves to spend more time with his lawyers and consider coaching offers from clubs and other countries. He wouldn't have changed anything, he says. Certainly not the new spirit of togetherness among the players, which may be English football's best hope for the future. Neil Bennett, BBC News, at the England headquarters.
Labour's plans for devolution in Scotland and Wales have suffered a blow in the last few minutes, with the resignation from the front bench of one of the party's Scottish Affairs spokesman, John McCallion. His decision followed the launch of Labour's plans for Scottish and Welsh devolution, where the party confirmed it will hold referendums on its plans should it win the next election. It had previously said they were unnecessary. Labour denied that the move meant a weakening of the party's commitment to devolution.
Tony Blair will answer his critics, including those in his own ranks, in a speech in Edinburgh tomorrow. Today he was in London, presenting awards to budding young politicians. He's long been sensitive to Labour's vulnerability in England over its plans for devolution to Scotland and Wales. The referendum strategy is a way of tackling that, even if some colleagues lose face in the process.
The creation of a Scottish Parliament is actually worth it. I'm willing to do that. Willing to say that my mind has been changed on the tactics and that I persuaded Tony Blair to take a different line along with my Scottish colleagues.
Labour launched its U-turn while insisting that its commitment to devolution was unshakable. The leadership is now convinced that its opponents have been wrong-footed.
They were telling us that they were committed to a tax-raising parliament. Now they're telling us that they're committed to having a referendum to decide what their policy should be. That is a retreat.
The response of the SNP will be the response of many people in Scotland, disgust at the U-turn that the Labour Party is doing even before a general election and under the pressure that they've been getting from the Conservatives.
Weighing heavily on Labour minds has been the perceived success of the Tory campaign against the tax-raising powers of the Scottish Parliament, hence Labour's decision to ask Scottish voters for their specific backing on the tax question. Among the Parliament's most prominent Labour supporters, there's some bitterness. Over 20 Scottish Labour MPs are said to be unhappy. One frontbencher is likely to resign tomorrow. There's already been one resignation today.
You get to the stage where you say, well, so far and no further. And maybe that time has now come for me to step back and allow other people to seek to progress this matter.
So it's a personal disappointment?
It's a bitter personal disappointment.
And some disappointment in Wales too, where Labour's Welsh Assembly, a body with no tax-raising powers, will now be elected by proportional representation. That's another policy change. And even those who stand to gain from PR suspect Labour's motives.
Tony Blair's latest appeasement of South East England voters shows just how little Wales can trust New Labour.
What Labour has done today is to change, fundamentally, the terms of the debate on devolution. It is a U-turn, prompted in part by a very effective Conservative campaign. But its result now means that the Tories have to find new ways of undermining Labour's policy. Hugh Edwards, BBC News, Glasgow.
And we'll bring you more on that second resignation of John McCallion, which came, in fact, tonight, later in this news. A team from Britain's Serious Fraud Office have arrived in Japan to investigate the £1 billion Sumitomo copper scandal. They'll focus on the London dealings of the rogue trader Yasuo Hamanaka. Hamanaka, who's gone into hiding, was known as Mr. 5% because his team was thought to control nearly 5% of the world's copper market.
A three-man team from the Serious Fraud Office arrived in Japan this morning to begin investigations into the Sumitomo affair. SFO lawyer Andrew Jackson was reluctant to outline exactly who they'll be meeting.
We've got nothing to say at the moment, thank you.
Their visit is aimed at finding out whether the Japanese company's huge losses involved fraudulent activities in London. As the British investigators landed in Tokyo, Sumitomo was holding its annual general meeting in Osaka. The meeting approved a plan to cover the losses, but some angry shareholders tried to question how Sumitomo's management overlooked the crisis. This man complained he didn't get a chance to ask questions. He said he wasn't convinced by the company's assertion that only one employee was responsible. Sumitomo sacked its star copper trader Yasuo Hamanaka 2 weeks ago, after his unauthorized trading was discovered. By the time the news was announced, Mr. Hamanaka had disappeared from his modest house in the Tokyo suburbs, leaving only his dog behind. His whereabouts are still unknown. Many have blamed Japanese business culture for the fact that the losses went undetected for so long. Mr. Hamanaka was a trusted employee in a business his bosses found difficult to understand.
The top management cannot understand the full, content of the copper transactions. So Mr. Hamanaka could do as unauthorized activities for a long period. This is a key point.
Market regulators from Britain and the United States are also in Tokyo to investigate whether any market rules were violated. It'll be some time before it's clear whether Yasuo Hamanaka was simply incompetent on a grand scale or whether he was part of an international conspiracy to defraud, helping other companies make big profits on the copper market whilst losing billions for Sumitomo. Juliet Hindle, BBC News, Tokyo.
Here, the Court of Appeal has ruled that councils must provide community care for disabled people regardless of the cost. The court said that Gloucestershire County Council had acted unlawfully by cutting services like home help schemes because of a lack of money. The ruling could affect up to 500,000 people.
When Gloucestershire County Council cut home services to around 1,500 people 18 months ago, Delia Weaver was one of the victims. Childhood polio means she has great difficulty with a number of household chores. Standing for long periods is painful and exhausting. She thinks the help with cleaning and laundry she got is essential.
They said they were taking my cleaning services away because they didn't have the money to pay for all of it. I mean, I was furious. I really was angry, and I said to her, I can't cope without all this cleaning. And their attitude is that, what's a bit of dust?
Gloucestershire County Council, facing a shortfall of almost £3 million, believe all they're guilty of is good housekeeping.
Quite clearly, a local authority, like an individual, when they go shopping, for instance, needs to take into account the amount of money they've got in their pocket when they set the level of services that they provide. You can't spend what you haven't got.
The implications of this case extend far beyond the people of Gloucester. Many social services departments throughout Britain have felt themselves forced to make similar decisions, unable to cope on existing budgets, but prevented by government capping from raising more revenue. This morning's judgment means directors of social services nationwide have some tricky decisions ahead of them.
The implications are considerable because social service authorities have been short of cash for a number of years, and this will make the position worse because we have finite budgets and we will therefore need to ask government for more funds for community care.
People like Delia Weaver will doubtless welcome today's judgment, but the problems with financing community care remain. Approaches to the government for more help seem unlikely to yield much. And even if today's principle survives the inevitable appeal to the House of Lords, councils may find themselves paying for care by raiding other parts of their budget. Peter White, BBC News, Gloucestershire.
A widely used garden pesticide has been banned from use after it failed a routine government review. The Ministry of Agriculture said that Rose Clear could cause severe irritation to the skin and eyes if used undiluted. Gardeners are being advised to contact the manufacturers, Zeneca Agrochemicals, about how to dispose of it. More than 8,000 cervical smear tests from a hospital in Norfolk are being re-examined after fears they may have been wrongly evaluated. A member of the screening staff at the James Paget Hospital near Great Yarmouth has been suspended and an independent inquiry has begun. Postal workers have started their second 24-hour strike over pay and conditions. It's expected to halt most mail deliveries tomorrow. But union leaders have suspended further industrial action to allow more time for negotiations. President Clinton has called for the world's leading countries to adopt a comprehensive program to fight international terrorism. He was speaking as the bodies of the American victims of Tuesday's bombing in Saudi Arabia were being flown home. Mr. Clinton is in France for the G7 summit of the world's leading industrial countries. From Lyon, our diplomatic correspondent Brian Hanrahan reports.
France's President Chirac greeted Mr. Clinton with condolences and a promise to put terrorism at the top of the summit agenda. Mr. Clinton called it the challenge of the 21st century. France has already prepared a statement pledging the leaders to combat terrorism. They'll issue it after dinner. Their first meeting over a meal will be followed by more formal sessions when America hopes they'll agree 40 practical measures to make international crime and finance, including terrorism, more difficult. Just bread and butter ideas, but they'll put substance on summit pledges. Earlier, in the small town of Perouge, President Clinton had reminded its citizens that Allied action had liberated them after the war. Now they must face terrorism together.
52 years ago, the French resistance worked here in common cause with American GIs to win your freedom back. Now we must join together to face down the new threats to our freedom.
The Prime Minister had used his time to boost British trade, sitting in on the launch of the new MG in France. But economic issues will be overshadowed here. After a meeting with President Clinton, he was asked about Dr. al-Masari, the Saudi dissident living in Britain, who'd claimed the Dhahran bombers had an intellectually strong case.
I can see no case, intellectual or any other sort of case, for the sort of activity in Dhahran. It is indefensible by any tenet.
America wants to punish states it accuses of spreading subversion, but already its attempts to choke off its partners' trade with Cuba are running into fierce opposition. The anti-terrorist rhetoric here may mute the arguments, but it won't settle the underlying differences. Brian Hanrahan, BBC News, Lyon.
The Prince of Wales has spoken of the royal family's losses as a result of the Northern Ireland troubles and said it was important for people not to bear grudges. He was speaking during a visit to Londonderry, where he was given a letter from relatives of the 14 people killed in the city on Bloody Sunday in 1972.
The Prince was in Derry to open a new primary school, a formal royal duty but with a specifically Northern Ireland context. It's in The Fountain, a small Protestant enclave, the last in this part of the city. What just about anywhere else in the UK would be a simple happy occasion, here carries political baggage from the last 25 years. The Prince is Colonel-in-Chief of the Parachute Regiment, which led to a protest just a quarter of a mile away in the city centre. 14 people were killed by paratroopers on what's become known as Bloody Sunday in 1972. The Prince was given a letter from relatives of the dead, an issue raised with him by the city's deputy mayor.
And I was on the official lineup to welcome him to the school, and when I did meet him I asked him had he received the letter, and he said that he did receive it and was aware of it. He then went on to say that we have all lost relatives in this conflict, including him personally, and that we must now learn not to bear grudges.
More political context in Enniskillen, a reception to which local councillors, including Sinn Féin members, were invited. They didn't attend. All that said, this royal visit has gone well, the longest in almost 20 years, and covering most of the province, even after the end of the IRA ceasefire. Dennis Murray, BBC News, Belfast.
The Governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patten, has warned businessmen in the colony not to abandon democracy when China takes control in a year's time. Already the old order is giving way to a new elite, millionaires who prospered under British rule, but who now sit on the Communist Preparatory Committee. In the first of our special reports from Hong Kong, Fergal Keane looks at preparations for the transfer of power.
Beating the retreat, Hong Kong's colonial police play the pipes of empire at Government House. But in just 12 months' time, the uniforms, the tunes, the building itself will be consigned to history. And the British, once masters of the East, will be replaced by a new Chinese elite. With every passing day, British influence here dwindles.
Very emotional, most emotional, and we have enjoyed living in Hong Kong, and we hope to enjoy living in Hong Kong in the future.
It's neither best nor worse, it's just going to happen, and you just have to do what you can to make it work as well as it possibly can.
Across town in the China Club, a light world away from the pipes and drums, they're listening to the strains of Beijing opera. This shrine to Chinese ways and cuisine is where many of the new elite come to eat and talk politics. The song is a hymn to the beautiful motherland, and it's warmly received by the wealthy businessmen. Two of these men were granted honours by the Queen. Now they're loyal advisors to China. They won't be manning any barricades for democracy and express little regret at the passing of empire.
Why should one feel sorry about it? The history always evolves on this course. I think one can never stop the history from moving.
The idea that economics should take precedence over matters of individual liberty is one that enjoys a great deal of intellectual credibility in this part of Asia. And the pro-China business figures know they're singing a tune which will be given enthusiastic applause by many governments in this region. But that is galling for a British administration which has always said that the primacy of democracy and human rights should be one of its enduring legacies. There is, to put it mildly, little love lost between Governor Chris Patten and the pro-China business lobby. He's warned them against abandoning democracy.
People are here in Hong Kong, overwhelmingly because of human rights and the rule of law and democracy. They're the refugees from turbulent events to the north. They know the difference between the rule of law and arbitrary and oppressive government. They came to Hong Kong as a haven of freedom, and I'm sure that they want Hong Kong to stay that way.
The farewell to empire has begun. Now the fear is that the new elite, in their rush to embrace Beijing, will abandon the open, tolerant society which has perhaps been Britain's greatest bequest to the people of Hong Kong. Fergal Keane, BBC News, Hong Kong.
Stefan Edberg, the former Wimbledon champion, is out of this year's tournament. He was beaten by fellow Swede Michael Tillström in 4 sets. And it's been a disappointing day for British players. Although Tim Henman is through to the 3rd round after beating fellow countryman Danny Sapsford, 3 other British men went out. Greg Rusedski was beaten in 4 sets by the New Zealander Brett Stephen. The other British losers in the men's singles were Mark Petrie and Chris Wilkinson. And in the women's singles, Claire Taylor and Rachel Violette are also out, both beaten in straight sets.
Overnight, it seems, the wind has sagged from the sails of domestic sporting success. Greg Rusedski had been one of 7 British men to reach Wimbledon's 2nd round amid earlier euphoria. Today, he was destined to be one of 4 to taste the current bitter flavour of defeat against New Zealander Brett Stephen. Carelessness cost him the 1st set, but in the 2nd, his character and bludgeoning serve came to the fore as he levelled the match. And he did little wrong in the 3rd, looking for much of it as if he had the measure of his opponent. But then came the tie-break, the tennis equivalent of the penalty shootout, and Rusedski had the misfortune to be shrouded in Gareth Southgate's mantle. A double fault to lose the set.
3rd set, Stephen.
He never recovered, Stephen's greater mobility and all-court ability carrying him to a comfortable victory.
Game, set, match, Stephen. 3 sets to 1.
Britain is through to the 3rd round. They had to be, since Tim Henman was playing his compatriot Danny Sapsford and overcoming him in 4 sets after a little local difficulty. And there'll be a Briton in the 4th round too, because Henman's next opponent is another fellow countryman, Luke Milligan. Clearly, that's a secret to guaranteed British tennis success. But tonight the theme returned to sad departures as Stefan Edberg, long one of Wimbledon's favourite figures, and based in England, wouldn't you know it, bade his final farewell, beaten in 4 sets by his compatriot Michael Tillstrom. Kevin Geary, BBC News, Wimbledon.
And tonight's main news again, a committee of MPs has said jingoistic gutter journalism may have been partly responsible for last night's riots following England's football defeat. And Labour's been hit by 2 resignations over its U-turn on devolution. First, Lord Ewing resigned as co-chairman of the Scottish Constitutional Convention. And in the last half hour, Scottish spokesman John McCallion has gone. We're joined from Westminster by our political correspondent Carole Walker. Carole, he said he'd resign tomorrow. What's the latest? What brought it forward to tonight?
Well, it seems certainly that the Labour leadership didn't want Mr McCallion to announce his resignation after Tony Blair's speech tomorrow. Mr Blair is due to address an audience at Edinburgh University and stress the party's commitment to a Scottish Parliament and to stress that he believes that these referendums are the best way forward. Mr McCallion had said that he would wait to hear what Mr Blair had to say, but obviously the pressure was on him to go and not to overshadow Mr Blair's speech tomorrow.
And how big is the revolt Mr Blair is now looking at? Is it one that he can easily ride out?
I think he's facing a very rough ride indeed with many members of the Scottish Labour Party. Mr McCallion had the constitutional brief. He spent the best part of 3 years stressing the party's commitment to a Scottish Parliament. He certainly believes that the second part of the referendum, the second question as to whether you want a tax-raising assembly, was a step too far, and that was something that he simply couldn't stomach. He's been a lifelong supporter and very strong proponent of a separate Parliament for Scotland. And I think that certainly Mr Blair is going to have a very tough time indeed with many members of the Scottish Labour Party.
Carole Walker in Westminster, thank you. And that's the 9 o'clock news. Good night.